shift a little bit because I read your reflection from yesterday. And like I said, I hit your page pretty much every day and just check out what you're writing and what you're going to. I noticed a distinct change in your tone. So like I said, I've been following, I've been reading, and I already know, man, you're truthful. Like, there is no truth. If you don't want the truth, don't talk to this man, okay? Like, if you don't want it, if you're not ready for it, if you don't want to be challenged in your thought process, he's probably not the friend you want in your life. Then you went to another level of truth that up to these points, if I'm honest, I get that level of truth on a regular basis over the phone. I've been getting that level of truth on a regular for years. But seeing you portray that level of realness and of truth online in a public forum, you know, I love it. I'm not gonna lie, I laugh because I'm like, whoa! Yep, he went there. And it's true. But nobody's saying it like that. You know, talk to me about the change in tone, and then a little bit more specifically, this thing that you wrote on the 27th that really just walked through the history of America. Like, if you want a timeline of all the things that have happened, and many times we've been looked at as the angry ones, as the ones whose culture is, you know, messed up, as the ones who have done these wrongs or have things in our history that we should be, I don't know, ashamed of, or just the things that we've been talked down about for all these years. You reversed it, went through the truth that is not shared in the history books, that is not shown on TV, that is not talked about, that's not revealed, that's not been brought to the forefront in many circles. But if you do any type of investigating, you would find out this is all true. So talk to me a little bit about the tone difference, man, because you went from just regular Goku to Super Saiyan on us.
Yeah, man. So I'm not gonna lie, you know. So I had some Senshu beats, right? Like, you know, I went to the you know, the increased gravity chamber and put some work in. But a lot of it was, you know, like I've been very open, and it's been funny actually. A lot of brothers have reached out to me and talked about. I've been very open about the fact that I started going to therapy a couple weeks ago. And you know, and one of the things that I try to do is, because I'm trying to just erase the stigma.
Yes.
I was trying to explain to somebody, because, you know, I think they was just like kind of a little hush about it. And it's like, hey, bro, listen, man, I'm going to therapy for the same reason you go to the gym, or the same reason we trying to eat healthy, for the same reason we try to go to bed early. Like, I'm trying to get well, bro.
Yeah.
And this idea that as a black man in America who has witnessed death firsthand, right? Who has witnessed suffering, who has gone through trauma, to think that you can go through that mess and not be dirty, right? Like, to not need to be made well again is you're being unfair to yourself, and you're actually setting yourself up to be swallowed whole by the monster that is already prowling to devour you anyway, right? Yeah. That is like, if your mental health ain't right, look at the number of people who were shot by the police who are having mental health episodes, right? Yes. They can't tell. You just look erratic to them, right? You look erratic to them anyway, but like, when you actually erratic, you know what I'm saying? Like, you got a real problem on your hands. But I think like the shift in tone was related to the fact that, like, one of the things I've been talking to my therapist about is like that. Real quick, did you watch the show The Watchmen on HBO Max?
I did not. No, I didn't do that.
So I can't say it then, because like there's a big reveal.
Don't mess around and do a spoiler alert, man.
No. That's what I'm saying. There's a big reveal, you know. Yes. But I'll just say there's a character called Hooded Justice, and Hooded Justice got a lot of rage, and I think like inside, like Hooded Justice is inside, like the wild-eyed, like, I will hurt you person is locked away in a cage. And I was telling him the reason why I started going to therapy is that person used to just like occasionally talk to me, right? Like, somebody would say something snickery, and he'll be like, hey man, you open this door, I can deal with it. And I'm like, bro, I do not trust you. I don't trust you out here in these streets, right?
Staying there.
But, you know, and I would say in the last probably 5 years, he's not knocking and he's not making suggestions. He is beating down the door off the hinges. And he's a lot bigger and a lot stronger than he used to be. And we had talked about, he was like, look, man, like you have to understand, it sounds like you have a schism within your body, right? He's like, it's like we all have this as Black people. We have to do it in a lot of ways to survive. But he was like, it clearly doesn't work. Like you can still be shot, right?
Yeah.
He was like, the thing that you have to do if you're going to be a whole person is reintegrate the anger and you. That anger has a place and a role. It doesn't get to drive the car, but it's in the car. It doesn't need to be thrown in the trunk.
Yeah.
And so my tone shift was literally related to the fact that I was letting anger speak. And I was letting anger speak in a way that was like, this is justified. And what anger was basically telling in that story was, y'all have on the daily for 10 generations spent time justifying to yourselves why you treated us terribly and pointed to our culture and our sunken humanity and all these kind of things, right? Today, that's over. Like, I'm calling you on the carpet and I'm asking you to look at the ugly, horrific freak show that is whiteness in America that goes uninvestigated.
Yeah.
And so that's really what that tone was. It was like anger was tired of people feeling comfortable with telling us how messed up we are.
Yeah.
I can give you an excerpt. I don't know if they're ready.
Well, I mean, I looked, obviously I'm looking at it even now. I've got it pulled up here, just looking at some of this stuff. And you have a part in here that says, I'll just say it. You don't love me. You don't love me if you won't listen, if you would treat me like an exception and my people like an aberration. You don't love me if you can know history and go to sleep saying it wasn't me, or to shrug off our executions with he should have listened. And that's one of the things that we've heard for years. And I have never been a proponent of anybody necessarily, abusing authority or, resisting arrest or all these other things. But at the same time, you said something earlier that's very true. None of those things are a capital offense.
Right.
You shouldn't die from that. You should have your day in court because of that.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to handcuff me and throw me in the back of the car, and even if I leave here with a few extra bruises because I didn't go quietly, we can deal with that. But I shouldn't. My kids should not have a father anymore because of that. And that's the distinction that I have not heard. I feel like this is one of the things that's so divided. I'm not hearing us saying he shouldn't have been arrested, and he could be any of these situations. None of us are not saying they shouldn't have been arrested. None of us are not saying they shouldn't have been thrown into the car. They shouldn't have been handcuffed. They shouldn't have been detained or whatever else. That's not typically the areas where we're fighting. The fight is in, they shouldn't have died in your custody.
Right.
There was, to your point, there was a veteran that was shot and killed yesterday, I believe.
Yeah.
He had a mental health episode.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things where I at least give the officers credit. They wrestled with him for a while, but he was having a mental health episode. Everyone involved has known this. They've known this. They've known he's been having these mental issues. He's recently lost a couple of family members. They've been coming out to check on him because of his mental health. His family actually called the police for this reason. And you look at what happens when, from a mental health perspective, someone who needed literal help, again, shot and killed, whose life is ended. This is what we're seeing. And I feel like this is some of the things that even you're writing about. So to walk us through some of your reflection, even from yesterday. Obviously, there's a mental health aspect that you hit in here. You talk about the water issue in Flint, Michigan, that still has not been resolved.
Yeah, and it's one of the ones that like I wanted to lead with. It's funny because I'll tell you this, like, it's not like when I sit down to write, it's not like I plan out like what's going to happen. It's like I do really just like let it naturally come out, and then I would like get it all out, and then I have to go back and read it like 97,000 times to edit it.
Yeah.
Cause like I'm typing away so much, like people will be like, bro, does this dude know English? Right? You know, because I'm just like I'm churning it out. But that, yeah, I mean, you know, one of the lines is like, you'll unflinchingly watch our children drink poison water in Flint, but we'll sue Yale for the claim that we don't have to meet requirements while we watch our white counterparts' parents defraud their way into their favorite colleges.
Yeah.
That, like, I think, you know, one of my really good friends, Travis, he wrote this thing yesterday about like, what's the purpose of a riot? And his thing was like, what is the purpose of a riot? You know, because people are like, what, you know, burning and looting, like, what is the point? And he's like, I don't know. There's like, well, it's irrational. He's like, you're right, but like everything Black people experience is irrational. Like, and we talked about it. And there's this line from The Killing Joke that he ends with, like the graphic novel, The Killing Joke, that he ends with, that I think is great, where the Joker's talking to Commissioner Gordon, and he's basically like, hey, that's why 1 in 8 people crack up, right? They go slavering mad, because, you know, basically in this life that is pointless and meaningless and full of pain and insanity, any other reaction is crazy. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Any other reaction than going crazy or doing irrational things to an irrational existence is crazy. It's like, I don't know, you know, so for me, it's like when I look at people in my reflection and my anger, it's just like, I don't know what you want us to do. Like, we didn't chop our own hands and feet off.
Yeah.
We didn't chum the water with your babies to catch alligators. You did that to ours. You didn't keep us in chattel, you know, you kept us in chattel slavery for, you know, 200 years, and another 100 years we had to like live as second, like not even second class citizens. We weren't citizens. We still weren't people in this society. Literally, the reason the Dred Scott case ended up the way it was, because like the final decision was basically that Black people were not and could not and will never be rightful citizens of the United States of America. Right? Like, when you really lay out the fact that we have not been people to you until 50 years ago, to think about all that we have been able to accomplish, and we're not even talking about just since the 50 years, but we forget that Madam C.J. Walker was like the first Black millionaire at the turn of the century. We were one generation away from slavery. We forget that in 1923, when they burned down Greenwood, there were more people who owned planes in Tulsa, Oklahoma than there were airports in the state of Oklahoma. That, like, our success has never been in doubt. It has always been suppressed. We have always been lied to about what has been going on. And basically, my whole question is, don't talk to me about my culture. Talk to me about yours. Talk to yourself and investigate why you feel like you have to defraud people of their own histories to keep your sense of superiority. If you were better, why do you cheat? Mm-hmm. Right? And I think, like, that's the anger that I have, to have on one hand people saying African Americans are in Yale because they don't have to live up to the standard, but Lori Loughlin is lying to get her daughter into USC.
Yeah.
This is happening at the same time.
Yes. And has the finances to do it so that it works.
Finances to do it. And they think when we have a problem with it, we're crazy. You know, it's in a lot of ways, it's like the abusive boyfriend who only has crazy ex-girlfriends. You know what I mean? By the way, ladies, beware of anybody. Yeah, beware of any dude who all his exes is crazy. Right. Right. But like, I think like that's what America does. Like they are crazy makers. Like they will make you, if you, I told one of my very beloved students like last night, you know, because like she hurt, bro. Like she hurt. Like her mom actually hit me up and was like, yo, I need you to talk to her. Right. She hurt because she's from Kenosha. She grew up there. Like she spent like her friends and family, right? And she's just like, I don't understand why people can't see this. And I was like, fam, you got to understand, you can't be out here on the battlefield until you do that internal work.
Yeah. Because
you're battling with people who are battling with you because they don't want to do that internal work. Like, yeah. To be honest with you, man, would you, I mean, being sincere, would you want to do the internal work when everything you have came from disgusting, filthy bloodshed? And like, I think that's hard, man. I mean, I think just on a really human level, like, I don't sympathize with it, but I can empathize with why somebody wouldn't want to look in the mirror on that.
Yeah.
I can understand why you'd want to look forward, because every time you look back, all you see is dead people. Right. But I think it's a horror show. And I think like for me, and I think what animates my anger and what animates that reflection is just like, I really want more Black people. If I can say anything to anybody who's Black, who's watching this, and I would say it to anybody who's Black, who's watching this, is like, stop trying to explain things to white people. Don't explain it. I think what you need to do is to just remind them that like they have a culture too.
Yeah.
That they need to spend more time critiquing. And that's what my reflection is ultimately about. It's like, don't talk about us. I get what you're saying. You'll never let us forget all of our shortcomings. Believe me, we know we have you here to keep us in check. Like our egos will never get out of control as long as there's a white man and a beer around, right? But like, no one's like, who watching the Watchmen, right? Like why? Like, you got to start asking yourself some hard questions. How is it that I can have no education and no real skills and yet amass a moderate fortune in my life, while there have been people like Garrett Morgan who were Black inventors who only until recently didn't get credit for important things like the gas mask, the portable refrigerator, two things that literally helped us win the First and Second World Wars.
Yeah.
Right. That literally is why we are able to do transplants and blood transfusions. That our contributions to this country are multitudinous, and that they have all been suppressed, that we don't know Henrietta Lacks, even though she's basically the reason for most medical breakthroughs. Johns Hopkins literally only has money because they stole from Henrietta Lacks. And so I think like we do need to stop pushing back and stop trying to like rationalize with the irrational. Sometimes the rational model does not apply. Don't talk to me about my culture. You don't know it. You don't understand it. Like, you know how I know you don't understand it? Because I'll be watching these videos on how y'all season chicken. It's like, and I know that sounds childish, but it's like, I'll be like, you was like, oh, I'm doing some Southern fried chicken. First of all, if you put a dash of salt, you definitely don't understand our culture, right? Like, we don't dash nothing, bro. And so, so that's like a funny way to put it, but it's like, you don't understand our culture. Like, you're talking about something you don't understand because you're trying to avoid having a conversation with the thing that you do. And I think we have to do it. And I would say for white folks, like, stop pointing the finger. Like, just like lean in. Really lean. Like, is it ugly? Absolutely. Go read a book and then like take a walk, like cry, like do the normal stuff that has to happen when you find out how disgusting this country's history is. No one's blaming you. No one hates you. I just need you to stop pointing at me and start looking at you, because we ain't getting out of this thing until y'all realize that like we didn't arrive here by ourselves.
Right.
Everybody's got some responsibility. Y'all fingerprints all over this though. In every other case, if your fingerprints all over the place, you are a person of interest. but not whiteness in America. Whiteness is all over everything, and whiteness is never the person of interest. And so that's what this reflection is about, making whiteness the person of interest in this crime caper called 2020 America. Yeah.
No, man, I think it's a great read. You know, I'll make sure that I put a link to that in this post, because I think I have to, because I think more people should read it and do what you said. This is not any African Americans or anybody else saying, you know, we want to destroy all white people. It's nothing like that. It is, let's talk about the other side of the story. Let's really dive into how we got here and the residual effects of all of these things that are being lived out now. And I feel like, you know, unfortunately, man, society was here back in the 60s, you know, fighting, a lot of the same stuff going on. You got the riots. I know there was rioting in Milwaukee back in the 60s. Same stuff going on now. And we keep replaying this cycle. My prayer is that 2020 can be different for that reason, because now there is that technology that's there that's able to get voices like yours out, that's able to get reflection pieces like this out to general population where people can look at it, and you should have a visceral reaction to it. I hope you do. Mm-hmm. And then what I really hope you do is that you go study the stuff he said. Go find out if what he's saying is true. And if it is, sit with that for a while. Think about how that could affect generations. Think about how that could affect families, family structures, how that could affect economics. how that can affect the transition of wealth that's passed down generationally or not passed down. I have conversations, I do sessions with various people, and I told them, we're just talking about Greenwood, just the Tulsa, Oklahoma one. And there were dozens of other massacres of thriving African-American communities all across this nation.
St. Louis.
Come on. We can keep going. Chicago, like we just keep going down the list. All these different places where Black people came together. We weren't allowed into typical society to thrive and to succeed, so we built our own. And then when we started being successful in that, somebody would come from the outside and destroy it. Destroy it, not just tear it down, destroy it, wipe out the people that had the knowledge. So you're not just losing the business, you're not just losing the building. We lost the knowledge that was never passed down. And I always ask the question, though, what would African-American society and culture be like today if those cities had been allowed to live and to thrive? What wealth would have been passed down? What knowledge would have been passed down? What buildings, businesses? How many inventions do we not have today that could have been? What answers could have been in place? We'll never know because those people were wiped out. And that's part of the conversation that I feel like we have to deal with. You have to be willing to accept. And then ask the question, which I loved. I had a lady in one of my sessions and she was like at the end, why was I never taught this? And I felt like there's a movie where the guy looks at him and he says, now you're asking the right questions.
Exactly.
Now you're asking the right, why weren't you taught this? Because I'm not giving you something that's not true. And I'm definitely not giving you something that's not known.
Right.
It's history. But we were never taught this. I had to go find it. I had to go look it up for myself. I had to go study it on my own because, man, we weren't taught about that in school.
Right.
Nobody was taught about, these other side of the coins and the things that were done, the reality that we were used as carnival attractions by the YMCA. Like, no one talks about some of this stuff.
Bro, I was a part of, before I left my last job, I was a part of like this, I was producing this podcast. When I tell you, it is fascinating. And the organization that commissioned us to do it will never let a lot of that content see the light of day. Because like the more we looked, the more we was like, they not gonna let this happen. Like, we had to put it behind a paywall or something, like not a joke. But like one of the things that was like really fascinating about what we learned was, so for example, Minnesota pats itself on the back for being open, right? Like the mayor of Minneapolis funded the very first troop of African-American Boy Scouts. Do you know what they had to do as a sign of thank you? Do a minstrel show for the mayor.
Oh, no.
And so this is in a newspaper that we found. And that's the most tame thing we found.
Jesus.
We'll just say there's an organization who shall remain nameless for right now, at least, that we definitely have some pretty rock solid evidence that they were basically economic hit people for the city of Minneapolis, for Black, to basically use grants to neuter powerful Black organizations and then pull funding to kill them.
Wow. And
so pretty strong evidence of that. And I'll just say it. I'll just leave it at that. But like when you dig into stuff like that, people think I want to say that they don't think you're crazy. They try to make you crazy because I think what the implications are is deeply devastating. Yeah, they're devastating. And I do get that. I get how to find out that everything ain't real. It's like that Matrix moment. Like, I just wish I hadn't swallowed that red pill.
Well, I think that the alternative, though, is that people are choosing to be like the cat in the Matrix that completely took the deal, and he's sitting at the table like, I'm eating this steak. I know it's not real. I know that I'm dreaming in a pod somewhere, but you know what? It's delicious.
Right.
And if I got to pick and choose, I'll take the Matrix. Like, he literally says that. I know it's not.
And the thing is, and we actually respect people like that.
Yes, because at least you're being honest.
I'll say this, because a lot of people, I think, would think that the person I have like a deep disdain for would be that dude, Richard Spencer, the alt-right guy.
Yeah.
Like, I respect Richard Spencer more than I do the average person. I don't agree with nothing he says. And his whole like white ethno state thing. It's like, all right, bro. Like, first of all, I don't understand how you gonna have a white ethno state when like all the cool stuff comes from us. But anyway, because I saw that dinner like that he did with Charles Barkley. He was like, bro, ain't nobody like being like, I'm going to go get dinner with Pistol Pete. Like, you know what I'm saying? We want to eat dinner with Michael Jordan. You know what I'm saying? Like, call it what it is. But I think the thing I do appreciate about Richard Spencer is that he's not hiding.
Yeah.
He's not. He's like the guy who's like, I know the Matrix. This is the Matrix. That this is all nothing, but it's delicious, and this is what I want.
Yes.
I respect. I also think that he and I, at some point in Convergence, came to the same conclusion, and he just responded in the most culturally appropriate way that he did. That he came to the realization that there is no going back. Right, like. It actually digs into my reflection, and I'm going to read it because I think it is going to illustrate the point of what I was saying to the guy with the Matrix. Let me see. I'll talk about ripping off, man. Here it is. So there's no easy way to learn that a cruel deal was made by your ancestors, that the thing that they did to the natives and the black folks, they also did to themselves and left you with the bill. They took our identities and gave up their own, and by extension yours, to lay claim to things and ideas, land, power, money, all derivative, none of them real. The aspiration was to melt their unique languages, customs, and histories into one singular identity coalesced around a singular idea, whiteness forged in their melting pot. And that whiteness was the ticket to your inheritance of the stolen land in those looted bodies until it was no longer your birthright and the looted bodies were freed, and it throws into flux what you mean, right? And to me, I think it is in that Richard Spencer understood. I think what I understand is that like the reason why people lay so much claim on America is because of what was given up. They gave up Germanness. They gave up Finnishness. They gave up, Lithuanianness. Yes. To become white.
Yes.
And what they were supposed to have was their 40 acres and a freaking mule. And they were supposed to have their freedom from tyranny and to do all the things that they wanted to do. And then that went away. And now they're just people. And I think that like what he did was respond in a way that the most privileged people in our society respond. I'm going to go make that world and exclude y'all. Right. But he knows, like we know, it's been lost.
Yeah. Yeah. But JB, I want to end with one other question that I think is important. We grew up in church. We got some issues, obviously, with some of the interactions and some of the things even now that we see going on within the church. How does a person like you, that's a intellectual revolutionary, how do you balance that with your faith? How do you balance the things you see, the things you feel? And I've always appreciated your level of honesty, man, even from you speaking about the anger standpoint and the things you're dealing with in therapy, the things you're writing about, the real history. You're an African-American man who literally, you said, man, look, I don't ever feel safe. Not totally. How do you balance that with your relationship with Christ as you know him, not necessarily as maybe we've been taught about him or as certain people have tried to portray him as, but in your own personal relationship? How do you balance those two?
Easy. I don't think they're balanced. I just think it's like, I just see myself as living out what you're supposed to do as a person who is committed to, the number of times the Bible tells us to do justice, to plead the case of the oppressed, to visit the widow and orphan in their distress, to feed the foreigner, to engage justly. to do right. Like literally in James chapter 1, it's like 127 or something, like pure and upright religion is this, to visit the orphan and widow in their stress and to remain unblemished by the world. Like I don't balance it. It's just like everything that I'm doing is a radical embracing of what it means. Which is why I also think, like, oddly enough, it doesn't scare me, to be honest, and to kind of expose myself to people's anger. Like, yeah, I mean, like anybody, I'm a human. Like, I don't want to, I don't want to get, berated and, whatever, for the reflections that I have. But it doesn't scare me to post them, because in the end, like, we already know that the penalty for the people who rise above society, the morals of society, are the same for the people who fall below them. But that, like, if we want to radically embrace what Jesus did, Jesus didn't go hang out with the Sanhedrin.
Yeah.
Like his people were not the religious scholars of the day. And so I think for me, I don't balance my faith. I think this is my faith. I think writing the reflections and realizing that it is abomination, like injustice is an abomination, and it is abominable to become comfortable with it.
Yeah.
That's what it is for me. Like, there is no balance. It is just, I think I'm just finally getting to the point, oddly enough. And I'll say this for any Christian who's like, having their own rough struggles with like church and all that kind of stuff. I feel like once I stopped placing primacy on my faith being connected to how frequently I attended church, and more so with how closely I embodied the principles of the gospel, mm-hmm. I have felt more free to be an imperfect person that has been qualified, right, to do the thing that I'm doing. And in a lot of ways, my writing doesn't feel thought out. I don't have to really think about it, because I do think that I'm like operating within my purpose. That, like, to me, my faith is pleading the case of the oppressed. So there is no balance. I think I'm just expressing it truly for the first time in my life, and not in like religious patterns,
yes.
But in meaningful, tangible ways.
Man, look, that's awesome. I want to say thank you for number one, just coming and hanging out, for the knowledge that you drop. Thank you for your friendship. That has been appreciated. And, I tell you that in private. I also want to tell you that publicly. With everything that has happened over the years, when I look back, there are certain people that have been a constant through it all. And you have been one of them people. Up, down, bad, happy, starting over from scratch.
Right.
Sucking at music, getting better at it, trying to learn to rap, being absolutely garbage, to actually doing some decent stuff in the future. Having some.
Bro, remember that time you ran out of breath in your. All right. Anyway, I'm sorry.
Bro, like, it's been some revealing moments. It's been transparency. It's always been love, and it's always been realness. And when you have people that are down for you at your worst, you know what I'm saying? Those are the people that you keep in your life. Those are the folks you hold on to. When people should leave you alone and they refuse to.
Right.
They show up every morning at 8:00. Hey, we gonna put some work in. I know you unemployed. I know your life falling apart.
You ain't got nothing to do.
Right, you ain't got nothing to do. This is the best time to plan.
Right.
That's the stuff that I will never forget, that I value. Anytime the phone rings and I can jump on the phone with you, man, I look forward. I always appreciate it. So please know that. And I'm looking forward to, it's going to be a few folks going to be mad about this interview, and that's completely cool. For the other people that are open to learning, interested in hearing, and understanding, thank you for sharing your heart, man. Truly appreciate you.
Well, man, hey, same. And I got to tell you, man, like, I see you at this point. It's like, man, you not my friend. You like my brother. We've talked about this. Like, man, it's like, I think the one beauty, I think, of our culture is that, like, everybody's kind of kinfolk. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
There's like friends, cousins, brothers. Like, that's all malleable. Like, and it's something that I really appreciate, man, because, like, you've definitely been, a brother to me, and I'll even say, man, something I've never told you, but I think, like, even like with all our 8 to 8 a.m. things, like you gave me also the opportunity to have these like really important moments with Big Jerry before he passed.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, and every time I use a cast iron skillet, I think about him and I hear him be like, now, Brown, the way you got to do this, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's like the cast iron skillets are like my portal, back to those days.
Because he wasn't cooking until he went and got his cast iron. He like
straight up.
It don't even taste right if you don't use it.
Right. And he was getting right with it with the okra and the cornbread. Like, brother, listen. And so, you were also kind of a door to that world. Like, basically a door to an experience I didn't know I needed.
Yeah.
And so I think we was holding each other up, during that time frame, man. And so, I really do appreciate that. I appreciate the opportunity to do this, for us to keep finding these ways to work together, man. So appreciate you, man. Love you, man. Want to see you always thrive, and I'm always trying to be down to help push that along.
Hey, well, thank you so much.